time, folks. Here we go.
But it was your daughter.
Okay, thank you for coming. Our first order is read this statement. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived by those present, and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. The minutes of the meeting from last month, are there any comments, suggestions, ideas, and motion to accept?
Motion to accept.
Motion to accept, second, all in favor? Okay. There's some warrants to be signed.
Warrants, yes we do. Invoices, staff payroll, refunds, and retirement allowances. The backup is attached.
Oh, no. I want to acknowledge receipt by the board members of the following Prim Board update, February 2016 to March 2016. February 2016 accounting packet, PERAC memo number 12, election regulations, PERAC memo number 13, disability regulations, PERAC memo number 14, second quarter earning opportunities. Place on file.
Yep, place it.
Item number 6 on the agenda, the retirement application superannuation. Can you read the names out?
I don't think you need to read the names out, do you?
Okay.
No, you don't have to.
Is there a motion to accept and approve as?
Motion.
Motion?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
I abstain.
Duly noted, abstained. Okay, motion passes.
Reason?
I have a.
Oh, because of, oh, okay.
Next is survivor benefits, Ann Burns, widow of Kevin Burns, school custodian. Motion grant the member survivor benefits to Ann Byrne, widow of Kevin Burns, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 32, Section 12, 2-B.
Motion made.
Motion made, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Motion passes. Membership issue, board to determine if drug testing stipend, Fall River Police Department contract, and holiday pay environmental police contract provisions fall under the definition of regular compensation for retirement purposes.
Oh, you want to say something first?
Yes, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone,
morning.
officially. Yesterday afternoon, I received a phone call from the attorney representing the union on the Superior Officers Union, but it also represents the Patrolmen's Union as well on the drug testing issue. And he had apparently been contacted just recently about that and asked that that issue be tabled to allow him to review it further and to submit something in writing for our consideration. So if there's no objection, I told him I would communicate that to the board this morning, so if there's no objection on that particular issue, a motion to table would be in order.
Motion to table?
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes to table.
But we still have the environmental police.
Yeah, and on the second issue,
Environmental.
with the holiday pay for the environmental police officers, I've provided to the board an opinion, if you've had an opportunity to look at that.
Yep.
from April 14th of 2016. The issue of holiday pay is fairly clear in the statute, that it only is regular compensation for police officers and firefighters, and is based on the information that I've reviewed and the evidence provided and documents provided, although the environmental police officers come under the jurisdiction of the police department, they're not police officers. So in light of that, it does not appear that we could consider that holiday pay to be regular compensation, so my recommendation to the board is to make a determination that it is not regular compensation, and thus retirement deductions would not be withheld from that particular stipend or category of pay. But happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Questions or further discussion?
I'm good with Mike's echoes recommendation, unless somebody else has something else to say.
I just, don't the environmental police now fall under the umbrella and do some city work too? Because I see environmental
The
police.
job description is there.
Yeah, I understand,
Okay.
but I'm just saying that they do,
Actually, they're compensated either through the water department
Yes,
and the enterprise funds, because their principal responsibilities are patrol the
water.
watershed areas and that,
Right.
so.
They used to be the watershed guards. They changed the
Right,
title.
And then they just
Yeah.
changed the title. And
Right.
additionally, I mean, they are in a separate union. They are part of the, not part of the Patrolmen's Association.
I understand that, but the question I had was, they, I remember a while back, there was a discussion about them doing some actual policing within the city limits. I do see their vehicles.
I think they are eligible, and I can research this further, but I think they are eligible to take private duty, extra duty assignments, but not as police officers. They're restricted in the amount of detail work that they can do.
Yeah,
Again, they're not able to do the same details that regular police officers do, so, again, but they do private detail work,
Okay,
if that's
thank
your
you.
question.
Yep, well, that's,
Any further questions? Is there a motion to accept Attorney Sacco's recommendation to,
motion to accept Attorney Sacco's
not to
recommendations.
consider, having motion? Is there a second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Yes,
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
now,
Hmm?
the motion was to accept recommendation, Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Motion to accept the recommendation of the attorney.
Not to give them the stipend.
Correct.
Yeah. Motion?
Are we
Now
good?
we've got new
We have new business, because we're going to be going to executive session thereafter, so let me bring in new business, and we have some guests here from the city. I'd like to acknowledge them and hear what you have to say.
So we're here today to talk about the new requirements of GASB 68, 67, and 68. Those are the GASB standards with regard to pension liabilities. And we have with us our guest, Chris Rogers, who is the partner from the accounting firm that now currently audits the city's records from Clifton, Lawson, and Allen. So Chris is going to talk to you about the requirements, the reporting requirements for this board.
Thanks.
Chris.
So, last year, all governmental units, cities, towns, states, et cetera, there was a new requirement for them to report their net pension liability on their financial statements. It's a very big change in the industry. It's the first time it had ever been done in the government sector. And, quite honestly, between the actuaries and their CPA firms, it was a difficult year. Because there was a lot of nuances to the standards. But we got through it, and now that we're through the other side, we're starting to see some other nuances that are starting to pop up. I won't get too far down into the accounting detail, but, you know, a little history. In the past, the retirement system has always been audited as part of the city's financial statements. They're what the retirement system is considered a component unit of the city of Fall River. So incorporated into the city's audit was the retirement system. And that worked, with the implementation of this new accounting standard, it worked for last year. The problem is, as we move forward, it's not going to work anymore for all of the the employer members of the retirement system. I believe all of them are June 30th year ends except for the Housing Authority. The Housing Authority is a March 31st year end. The problem that creates is the standard requires that the net pension liability be measured no later than 1 year from the date of your financial statements. So in the case of the Housing Authority, with the March 31st year end, and if we were just to look at March 31st, 2015, we can't use the report that we issued last year for their liability because it's more than a year from their year end date. So the bottom line is that every December 31st, they need their pension liability measured as of December 31st, 2015 for their March 31st, 2016 financial statements. And that 3-month delta will continue in perpetuity. And one of the new accounting requirements, typically all we used to do, right, there's an actuarial performed every other year, and then we have the city's it's audited as part of the city. Well, with this new net pension liability, there's additional schedules that are required. It's what's referred to as pension plan schedules. And what we have to do from an audit perspective is issue a separate report that identifies each of the employer members and their share of the net pension liability, pension expense, et cetera. So the problem now is that the Housing Authority, if we keep it under the same model that it's been for years, the Housing Authority is not going to get the information they need to report their net pension liability until at the earliest November each year. The problem is that that's 2 months after their reporting deadline. And therein lies the problem. It's because they have a September 30th reporting deadline. The only way that we can actually accomplish this is to issue a separate financial statement for the retirement system and issue a separate pension plan schedules report for the retirement system to provide to the employers so they can record their net pension liability. So that's why we're here to talk to you about this, because it would require entering into an engagement to audit your financial statements and issue these pension plan schedules for your employers. So again, obviously it's a change from the past, but in order to get the information that your employers need, it's really the only approach that we can take. And you know, we're doing this with most of our retirement systems that have employers that have different year ends, because that's really what's causing the problem here. So I'm going around to many retirement systems giving this speech. One thing I thought I would do, we did it with Brockton Retirement System, sorry. Unfortunately, I only have one copy with me, but these are the types of reports that get issued at the end of the day. And the cost, as it relates to this, obviously there's a cost to it. The cost to issue the audited financial statement and the pension plan schedule for the employers is about $20,000. So that's what I wanted to bring forward to you and make you aware of, because my guess is, and I think this probably goes back to our industry, to be honest with you, we were so concerned about getting our audit clients ready for this, that the retirement systems probably hadn't been educated enough, quite honestly, on what the requirements were as it relates to these two accounting standards. Because it is a significant change, not only from the city and town standpoint, but really from, I think from retirement system standpoint. Because I'm aware that PARAC comes in every 3 years still and performs their audit. You have your actuary done every couple of years. The actuaries have new responsibilities now. They have to do a roll forward of that liability every year. If you don't go through these processes, what will end up happening is that your member employers, they're going to have qualified opinions on their financial statements, which isn't good for obviously the financial markets. So again, this is the second year of implementing the standard, and I'm sure we got a couple more years of like ironing out some of these things because it's new to everybody. But that's what I wanted to bring forward to this board. You know, I'm not saying that you have to hire us to do it. Obviously, we'd love to do it. We audit the city. I did speak with PARAC last week, just to verify that that retirement systems don't have to go out to bid to have an audit. Because I knew there was some back and forth on whether, I forgot the memo number that was issued on whether or not it was required to be an RFP process. I spoke with Harry Chadwick over there last week, and he said it's of PARAC's opinion that there's no need to go out through an RFP process.
So the problem here, just to kind of add on a little bit to what Chris is saying, is the problem is a little bit more than just reporting to the actual members, the participants. So what happens now with GASB 67 and GASB 68 is it's your responsibility as a board to provide your participants with the net pension liability and with these pension schedules. So people like Diamond and the Housing Authority now will have to have this same information. In the past, Clifton Lawson and Allen and our firm back when we were doing it, we do the fiduciary responsibility. We would audit it as it related to the component unit portion, the part that belongs to the city. But now, all of the census data has to be tested. It has to be tested for each of the entities, and it has to be reported based on this new regulation of these measurement dates. And so what's happening is, one, you would be bothered by all of the entities or all of the auditors from all of the entities. So in this case, you know, Chris would be over asking about census data, testing payroll with regard to the city stuff. The auditors from Diamond, which I believe is Powers and Sullivan, they would be in here looking for that stuff. The auditors from the Housing Authority, they would be in here looking for that stuff. So you would be bombarded with at least three sets of auditors. Your fourth member participant is the Redevelopment Authority, and I believe they don't have any payroll, at least not at the moment. So what's really happening across the industry, as Chris just indicated, is the responsibility to have this work done and provide this liability to each of your members is really falling on the backs, if you will, of the retirement boards. And honestly, from my point of view as well, that's really where it should be. Because you should be providing that information, you should be providing all those pension schedules. And your members should just be, if you want to say simply referring to that report in their opinion letter and including those dollars in their information. In the long run, it doesn't cost this board anything because those expenses would then be allocated back through the assessment process back to the members. So initially, yes, you would have the outflow of cash, it would be on one of your warrants, but ultimately, it would then be recalculated back into the assessment. You as a board, or Christine, would only have to deal with one set of auditors in here. She wouldn't have to deal with three sets, and you wouldn't be dealing with the measurement data problem that you're going to have with the Housing Authority because they have a different year end. If they had the same year end and you wanted to, entertain three sets of auditors in here, it really would be no additional stretch on your part except for time pulling out data for the auditors. But in this case, because your Housing Authority has a separate year end, a completely different year end, as Chris indicated, the measurement date is going to be the problem. And so you're not going to be able to use the same data with the way you're currently doing it without additional dollars spent on everyone's behalf. Questions? Thoughts?
It's a boatload of information.
I have a couple, just if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Please.
a couple questions or comments. I don't disagree in terms of any expenditure or expense the board has gets funneled back through the appropriation process, so there isn't any actual cost, although there is a cost because interest is factored into that when it goes back into the funding schedule. So to the extent that we're able to make the expenditure to begin with, that to me is more the question, because I haven't looked at this because it wasn't formally on the agenda and we can't obviously take any action on it today. And if the board asks, I will look, but I'm not aware of the legal obligation that the board has to do this work, as opposed to the legal obligation on the member units to produce the reports. So, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but what, as a board, the first question we have to address is whether or not it is an authorized expenditure. And perhaps it is suggested in GASB 67 or 68, I don't know which one applies to the retirement board versus municipality. And if it's in there, then, then that issue can be addressed. But that's the first issue that I don't think we've even looked at as a board that we need to look at. I know in last year when this came about, there were requests for retirement boards to foot the bill, if you will, for the added expenses, but those are all the municipality's obligations. So, at least in my client base, I'm not aware of anybody who outlaid those funds for that because it wasn't a board obligation to do so, in as much as it was a municipal obligation to create the reports. I'm not trying to split hairs, but that's what we do as lawyers, right? We have to look and make sure that any expense that this board makes has to be authorized by Chapter 32 and be within that. So, and I don't know if you've spoken to anybody at PERAC, I haven't.
Yeah, I spoke with Harry Chadwick last week about,
Well, that's auditing though, not legal, so
Well, I can tell you that there are numerous boards across the state that have a separate independent audit done of their retirement system.
Oh, absolutely, have a separate audit done,
So,
but.
I may not understand what you mean by audit.
Okay, sure. There are many boards who employ outside audit firms to do an audit of the retirement system, because they can do that, or they can have PERAC do the audit. The information that you're indicating is necessary for the member units to file their reports would not be ordinarily encompassed within a Chapter 32 audit. This is additional information that has to be done with respect to GASB 67 and 68. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, if we had an outside, or PERAC does our audit, the information that PERAC does in its audit would not satisfy 67 and 68,
No,
correct?
that's close.
Right, exactly.
That's correct.
And that's my point. So the only audit that Chapter 32 requires that retirement boards do is either to have PERAC conduct that audit, or for the board to engage an outside firm to conduct the same type of audit that PERAC does from a Chapter 32 perspective. These are additional requirements. All I'm saying is that I have not seen, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I have not seen any language in either GASB 67 or 68, and certainly not in 32, that would indicate that it's a retirement board obligation to outlay these funds. Even though they get them back, that's not really the issue. Any dollar we spend is allocated in some fashion back to the municipality. So it's not about allocating the money, it's about the authority to allocate the money. So, and that's something that obviously the board can decide if they want that to be reviewed, from a legal standpoint. I'm happy to do that, but from an informational standpoint, was there anything else that you wanted to share with us in terms of what the obligation is?
No, I think
I-
GASB 67 would be for the pension retirement systems,
Well,
68.
but it's related to pension data, but
That's
it's
correct.
That's
I mean, that additional
requires the
pension
employee-
plan schedules
unit
report,
to-
it
employer
is,
to do it.
it has everything to do with the numbers that are in the financial statements and your actuarial. That's really what it comes back to. I understand more clearly what you were saying. I'm not a lawyer, so I won't pretend to split that hair. So,
And I won't pretend to be an auditor, so that's good.
That
Stay in your lane,
$20,000 fee that you're talking about, that's, I'm confused by that amount.
what amount?
The 20, you're saying about approximately $20,000
Yep.
is what it costs to do that?
Yes.
Because I find that high. I mean, if the board hired an outside actuary and added these things on, I don't think we'd even pay that much.
Well,
for the
actually, I mean,
audit
it's a
and-
totally different service. That's apples and oranges.
But if we added the service on, because
Added the service onto what?
if we hired an actuary and then had him perform these additional
They can't.
numbers, they can't.
No. So the actuary actually produces the schedule. To be honest with you, they produce the schedules.
Yeah.
But now you get into my world, from an auditor's perspective, those schedules are unaudited at that time. So we have to go through a process and audit those schedules that are in the actuary's report. So they do, like when you get your roll forward this year, you'll see the schedules that are in there for your member employers. Our problem is that if I'm auditing the city of Fall River or the housing authority, I just can't take the actuary number and drop that number into my financial statement. And again, this is an industry thing, that the accounting or the audit profession had to figure out, number one, we're not actuaries, right? So how do we audit those schedules from the actuaries? And they came up with a method of auditing those and issuing the separate pension plan schedules report. Now, the pension plan schedules report isn't the $20,000 fee. It's the audit plus the pension plan schedules. I just want to be clear on that. Where does I want to go with this? But yeah, so the only reason that that pension plan schedules report exists is because that's how we determined we could place an opinion on each of the members' individual financial statements through that separate report. That was the only way we were able to do it.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add as well, so this new requirement, what we're finding now as we're negotiating our contract with our independent auditors is that is now, that additional responsibility is becoming an obligation of the city of Fall River, because the members are part of our group, if you will, and we're finding that it would be, to our mind, much more efficient if it were generated from the retirement board, and then the members would understand that this is a requirement, and that, again, ultimately, they would be paying it through their assessment, as opposed to coming to the city to say, we'll incorporate it in your audit, and then you pay the extra dollars, and then we have to go about negotiating whatever we need to do with them. So we're seeing it as much cleaner and coming with much more authority if just the retirement board entertains the exercise, provides the schedules as required, and then again, the individuals are providing it. We know we're gonna have a problem with the housing authority, but again, we don't believe that should necessarily be within the scope of our independent audit, but because they're a member, we're getting caught in this new regulation, and where does the municipality's obligation lie? So, well, we certainly don't want you doing anything that by law you're not allowed to do, and we certainly respect that. I would just ask that if there is the opportunity for you to complete this task and service and do it through the retirement board, it would be far more efficient and a great accommodation to the city to be able to facilitate it through you, as opposed to our having to undertake it and somehow come up with a way to satisfy those members within the city's scope of services. So.
Anything else that you can enlighten us on, or?
No, I think we've thrown enough at you for today.
And if I may just reinforce what Chris mentioned, I mean, even for the retirement board administration, which is basically Chris and her staff, it'll be much more efficient to deal it once rather than dealing with 3 different audit requests from 3 different auditors. So, I mean, even from our own internal administration point of view, I think it'll be much more efficient if we have to deal it only once, rather than having to deal with 3 different auditors and request for the same census or different census data for different times, and going through 3 different, requests from 3 different entities. So,
In one way, or I will say this, one way or another, that pension plan schedules report has to get done. I guess that's the only way I could say it, because if it doesn't get done, there'll be, everybody's opinions on their financial statements will be qualified. And that therein lies the problem. And when we look at it, this is the quote-unquote easiest route to go. Do the audit of the retirement system, issue the pension plan schedules report, and hand it out to your members. So.
One question, putting efficiency aside, if each audit firm from the member units were to have access to the information that the board provides and provides it to them, even if, let's say that Chris, not that I'm trying to put work on her, but let's say that Chris had to do this 4 times. That expense of doing it the 4 times would be borne by each individual member unit through their audit firm, right?
But it'll be also a burden on this
Well, but-
office also to dig up that information 4 different times for 4 different measurement dates.
Understood.
Or at least 2 different measurement dates.
But,
Housing
but there's no expense to the work. It's repetitive.
Right.
And, but Chris is not gonna talk to me anymore, but the staff, the staff is already paid to
Hit the
do,
hit or not.
so there's no additional expense for them to do it. The if it may be more efficient, but then that also would result in the board hiring an audit firm to do the work. And that's where the expense lies. So have I misstated anything?
But is there anything in the law which prohibits board hiring from, I mean, that's something for you to check it out, of course.
Well, and that's.
Is there
that's
anything
the-
in the MGL or any other law that you know of which prohibits the board from hiring an auditor to do this job, which has to be done?
Well, I think that where and unfortunately legislation is, that's why lawyers have jobs. Legislation is not always crafted in a way that allows things to work smoothly, so.
You would need a second actuarial report, because you're 2 different measurement dates now. So you couldn't use, so you would double at least the cost of your actuarial report, because you'd have to have 2, because your measurement dates are gonna be different.
And if we need a second actuarial report, that's different than the auditing report, right?
That's correct.
So if, and again, I'm not questioning what you're saying, but I haven't looked at it independently, but
Sure.
if we needed more actuarial information, that's an expense that perhaps we would have to incur, but then we still go into the audit issue, and that's the one issue that I just can't really comment on definitively, because I haven't looked at it.
Sure.
I haven't seen anything from PERAC in terms of a memo saying that retirement boards are obligated to do this, which you would hope that you, from our regulatory authority, you would, and I use the word hope, that you would receive some direction from them, because as fiduciaries, the board's only allowed to expend funds
Sure.
for the administration of the system. And that's where I'm unclear, because I haven't done the research, and if the board asks me to, I will. But I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't misunderstanding anything, and I think I have.
I think at the end of the day, one way or another, these pension plan schedules have to get issued. I don't think you're gonna find any issue with it, like when you dig into the law. I will tell you this, based on my conversations with PERAC, they don't really deal in